Hi, I'm Adrienne from Sew PDF, and today I'm going to show you how to make these handy and adorable swimsuits. This is a printable PDF pattern that comes in adult and child sizes. You can use swim fabric for the upper portion. You can either use one layer or 2 layers of swim fabric. I've used 2 layers of swim fabric, and the sole, this is called Tough Tech fabric that I use. So that's a brand name of non-slip fabric that is intended for this type of purpose. There are other brands. I believe there's something called Slipknot that is sold from some US companies. Tough Tech is more common, I think, in Canada and the UK, but you can order it from a number of shops. And all of the shops that I've ordered mine from before are in Canada. So if you need a recommendation for a Canadian shop, just drop me a note in the comments. So this is going to be a really quick video. I'm just going to go through the easiest version of this. It doesn't have a lining for the sole, so there is an exposed seam in there. You can see there's an actual seam there. It doesn't bother me. I've worn these and it doesn't bother me around the edge of my feet, but if you have someone with some sensory issues and it might bother them, there is a version with fully enclosed seams. And we have a longer video, which is a recorded webinar that was a sew along, and it goes through the different versions of this swimsuit in detail. Now, I just want to add a little note here. If you have not sewn with stretchy fabrics before or with swim fabric before, there are some things you're going to need to know. You're going to need to be using the right kind of needle. For swim fabric, you definitely want a stretch needle, and you'll need to be using a stretch stitch on your sewing machine. You can use a serger, but I don't recommend it. It adds bulk to the seams and it's less comfortable to wear that way. So I do recommend using a sewing machine. If you need some help figuring out the right settings for your sewing machine to sew stretchy fabrics with, I have a whole series of videos on sewing with stretchy fabrics, and you can check that out at the link in the description. So to start, you're just going to put your shoe outer and your shoe lining together, right sides together, and sew all around the inside U shape. Once that's done, you need to clip the curve. And I'm going to show you why you need to clip the curve here in a second. But to clip the curve, what you're going to do is make small vertical cuts just up to the stitching line, all along that curve. So what this does is it allows the fabric to spread out when you turn it the other way. The next step is to take the back part, which is the heel, and you're going to unfold it and flip it so it is right sides together, like this. And you're going to sew along this back seam here. Now, the easiest way to line up the seam here is to flip your seam allowance on one side in one direction and flip it the other direction on the other one. It's going to stay in place much better than if you open the seam allowance completely. So you're just going to sew along here. And I've got one that's already done here. And this one, I have not yet clipped the curve. So I'm going to show you why it's important to clip that curve. So without that curve clipped, you can see it is puckering all around the edge here. It's not laying nicely. But after I clip that curve, it's going to lay nicely. And there we go, so much better, laying nice and smooth. So you can do this after you sew the back heel, but it's just a little easier to do it before you sew the back heel. So now all we need to do is sew this shoe top to the sole. Okay, so before pinning the top to the sole, what I've done is I have done a basting stitch, which is a long straight stitch around the edge just to keep the 2 layers together. And I did that very close to the edge so that the stitches will not show. Okay, so you want the side that is the main side, not the lining. So in this case, I've used the same swim fabric for both sides, but this is the side that I want to show on the outside. So this is going to need to be facing the sole. Now, the toe matches pretty accurately, so it will be very clear where it goes. You can stick a couple of clips on there. I do recommend clips and not pins. For the heel, what you can do is fold the heel in half to find the middle point. And once you have that middle point, you can match that up with the back seam of the heel. Now, for the most part, this should be pretty easy to just match it all up. I recommend leaving the heel for last, and I will explain that in just a minute here. So there should be no stretching of any of the fabrics, just matching them up nicely. But when it comes to the heel, you are going to have to stretch it a little bit because the upper fabric is a straight edge, whereas the sole is a curved edge. So where the upper fabric matches is along the stitching line of the sole. It does not match the outside. The outside is longer than where the stitching line will be. So this fabric is going to have to be stretched a little bit along the edges of it, just around the heel there, so it fits nicely. And there we go. Now it's time to sew these. So here's the inside of my completed shoe. I did go around and I trimmed the seam allowance down to 1/8 of an inch, which the pattern recommends. It just has less bulk inside if you trim it down. So that's it. This is a great pattern to use up scraps of swim fabric, as well as to protect your feet when you're at the pool or the beach or anything like that. And right now this pattern is actually part of a sale on Scrapbuster patterns at Sew PDF. The sale ends on July 29th, and if you've missed the sale and you want to make sure you don't miss any in future, please make sure you sign up for our newsletter. There's a link down in the description for that as well. Thanks for watching, and if you were interested in that series about sewing with stretchy fabrics, you can click up here to start watching that now.